the Anti-Apartheid Movement started as the boycott movement. We took our inspiration and our motivation from the peoples of South Africa. The AAM, as I said, started as the boycott movement in 1959 to persuade British shoppers to boycott apartheid goods. It invoked Chief Mutuli, who was president of the African National Congress, his appeal for an international boycott of South African products. In March 1980, they organised a month of action. And for 35 years, the consumer boycott was at the heart of the anti-apartheid campaign. Hundreds of thousands of people up and down the country who never attended a meeting or a demonstration showed their opposition to apartheid by refusing to buy goods from South Africa. I mean, of course, in those days, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have mobile phones, so most of our communication was either by telephone, leaflets, posters such as these, and telephone communication with us, between ourselves, and letters. You know, that's how we organised, not through mobile phones. So, you know, posters, leaflets, badges were really intrinsic to how we organised. So the first boycott movement listed the South African fruits, sherry, and Craven A cigarettes as goods to avoid. They regularly updated its list of South African brands, asking shoppers to look at the label, look before you buy. And with the growth of supermarkets, like Tesco and Sainsbury's, we campaigned to stop them stocking South African products. Brands such as Outspan and Cape Apples. Up and down the country, our local groups organised days of action outside local shops. So we mobilised local trade unions, local political parties, mostly liberals as they were then, and the Labour Party, local trade unionists, and sometimes even our local politicians. I can remember in Brent, Ken Livingstone stood outside Tesco's to try to persuade people not to buy South African goods. Yeah. We also organised what I would call peaceful direct action. Members would go into shops and put stickers like "product of apartheid," put those labels on South African goods. We would go around into the supermarket, fill up a trolley with South African goods, go to the counter and say, "We're not buying these because these are South African." It gets the point across to the management of those shops. In areas such as St. Paul's, which is part of Bristol. Thank you. Local activists managed to do what is being done now. They managed to persuade local shops not to stock South African goods and declare St. Paul's an apartheid-free zone. Similar things happened in other places like Brixton and parts of Nottingham. As I said earlier, posters, leaflets, T-shirts, and I think the Anti-Apartheid Movement was quite well known in those days for its colourful posters, T-shirts and badges. And I think that was important because we didn't have TikTok. I'm sure nowadays that we should be using social media, and much more. So groups up and down the country, we can see, particularly the students' unions, you see people wearing the t-shirts, and we put up the posters when we had days of action, particularly trying to persuade people to follow up what we were trying to get the message across. Some groups of workers, particularly brave, mainly female workers in drug stores in Dublin, for example, went on strike. You think many of you remember that? They went on strike for 3 years, from 1984 to 1987, until in 1987 the Irish government banned the import of South African goods. As South Africa diversified its exports in the 1980s, the AAM focused on fashion chains like Marks & Spencer's, Next and Austin Reed. We were asking people to boycott South African goods, not the retailers themselves. Next and the Co-op stopped selling South African goods. From 1983 to 1987, British imports from South African textiles and clothing fell by over 35%. So this does have an effect. Omar Baguti is quite right. If we each take action, we can make a difference. In June 1988, an opinion poll found that 27%, that means millions of people up and down the country, boycotted South African goods. When the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, undermined the international sanctions in the mid-80s, they recast the boycott campaign as a call for people sanctions. In 1989, this is one of the batches. In 1989, the boycott bandwagon, which was a converted double-decker bus, took to the streets with a message going out to cities and towns all over Britain. The campaign then spread to gold, coal and tourism. The anti-apartheid activists targeted the South African and Namibian stands of the world travel market at Olympia. I think that the boycott was one of the most successful of all of the AAM campaigns. It was finally lifted in September 1983 after South Africa irreparably set on the path to democratic elections. It was successful because it had legitimacy. We were following the call of the liberation movement in South Africa to boycott South African goods. It was an action that everyone could take, and millions did so up and down the country. When I joined the Anti-Apartheid Movement in 1972, success felt like it was going to be decades away. It was a couple of decades away. But by 1994, we had a free democratic South Africa. Remember what Dennis Goldberg said at the beginning of this presentation. Every time you buy a Cape apple, you are buying a bullet to kill our people. I fear that history is repeating itself. But remember, every time you buy an Israeli avocado or an Israeli debt, you are buying a bullet for the IDF to shoot Palestinians. Thank you.